Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the WeSurf Podcast, brought to you by WeSurf Media, distributed by the Swell Season Surf Radio, and recorded currently at the WTF Media Studios. So, here we go. The ocean remembers us, even when we forget ourselves. It remembers everybody that ever approached it with fear, with curiosity, and with hope. Surfing is not just about standing on a board. It is about learning to listen to the wind, to the water, to the stories that move beneath the surface. So today on the WeSurf Podcast, we sit with my next guest, Yvette Cave, surfer, creator, and founder of Wave Wahinis, and a Churchill Fellow who is following waves across borders, not just to conquer them, but to ask better questions. Questions about access, about belonging, about who gets to feel at home in the water. This conversation is about surfing as culture, as memory, and as a way of returning to ourselves and to each other. This is WeSurf, so let's paddle out. Yvette, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute delight to be here.
Thank you. So for those of you, so our listeners who are, of course, watching and listening, you may have noticed Yvette has a slight accent. So would you let our viewers and listeners know where you are from?
Just a slight accent. I'm from the southwest of the UK, so a little place called Devon. I live in Croyd, which is a World Surfing Reserve. And I am currently travelling as part of my Churchill Fellowship. So I've never felt more British than I currently do. The first thing I did when I checked into my little Airbnb was go and find a kettle so I could get some breakfast tea, because I was absolutely desperate for a cup of tea, but I really am aware of my British accent right now.
I actually should have brought you some tea. I should know better. I should have brought some tea. So for our listeners who are meeting you for the first time, let's break it down to this. Who is Yvette and how did surfing first enter your life?
Well, I am a mother of three, first and foremost. I've got three children. Surfing entered my life. I had my first surf lesson when I was 30. It was very much a bucket list thing of this is something that I would like to try, and then didn't really think anything of it after that lesson. It was really fun. I was really terrible, but enjoyed myself nonetheless. And then my eldest child, when they were 12, we'd relocated from Bristol, a city in the UK, down to the southwest where we live now. And they really wanted to surf. And surf lessons are incredibly expensive. So I was a single mother at the time, so couldn't really afford that as a cost. So we looked at surf lessons, surf clubs that were local, but they were all quite boy heavy. You know, my sort of then daughter was obviously at the age where she didn't necessarily feel that confident and that comfortable around, big groups of boys. And we didn't have any kit, and everything was, you had to supply your own kit and stuff. So I was a personal trainer at the time with my own business. And for me, sport was everything. Finding a sport was my primary focus for all my children and always has been. And, it's just my luck that my child picked a sport that I had so little knowledge of and could not teach them at all.
So it always works out.
Oh my God, honestly. And I spoke to a couple of female surf coaches and just said, look, there's obviously got to be other parents like me within the local area that can't teach their children, but really want them to learn in an environment that is more geared towards, non-competitive surfing, just being in the water, having fun, being safe, and is less sort of judgmental, because it felt like a really sort of judged space. And if you didn't have the right kit, you probably stood out a bit more. Mm-hmm. A local surf school, Surf Southwest, just took a chance on us and said, actually, here, have a season. As long as you can pay the coaches, let's see how it goes. And that was 10 years ago. Nice. So, yeah, it went pretty well.
Epic. Definitely heard a lot about that. I think every person who's ever sat at this table, or whether physically or remotely, has mentioned at some point about the judgment that they feel when they first start learning how to surf. Unless, of course, like you started when you were like, knee high to nothing and you really didn't care what anybody thought. But otherwise, once you started to develop your own ego and so on, then, it definitely becomes a thing. And people mention that. So you also formed the Wave Wahinis.
Yes.
And so where did the name Wave Wahinis come from, and how did you start that up, and why?
Well, the club started just as a direct response to my eldest wanting to surf and just creating that space that was more aligned with their demands and their needs and needs of our local sort of, you know, girls community, and something that was that safe, non-judgmental and fun space. So it kind of came from that. And we wanted a name that reflected the sort of real roots of surfing. You know, I'm quite a geek when it comes to certain things. And so if I am going to do something, I really like to learn about it and learn the history and the reasons behind things. And so we wanted to kind of keep the name rooted within sort of Polynesian roots and Hawaiian roots. And Wahine is obviously the name for female and particularly relates to female surfer. So we decided like Wave Wahinis would be the perfect way of paying sort of homage to that cultural history. And just also being really focused on the fact that it was a female-led club.
And the tagline, surf like a girl.
Surf like a girl.
Love
it was surf like a girl.
Love it.
We do still obviously use surf like a girl on a lot of our stuff, but we've also changed some of it to, I've got another one somewhere, but it's powered by love.
Powered by love.
Because my eldest one actually identifies as Aiden now. So our family has changed. So it felt like actually to incorporate, you know, my son's identity, and he's run some trans and non-binary surf sessions with us. We kind of decided that actually whilst we didn't want to ever lose the surf like a girl ethos, we also wanted to grow as a family, and decided that actually the club began as a family thing, and it has always been powered by our love for family and our love for communities. Yeah, we kind of incorporated powered by love alongside.
So like in surfing, anytime you're surfing on a wave, you know, you can't be stiff, you can't be rigid, you have to go with the flow.
Yeah.
And just be as flexible as you can as you ride that wave. I
Exactly.
Love that. So let's talk a little bit about the fellow. You're a Churchill Fellow, which has given you the opportunity to travel and study surf culture more deeply. You're going to make our listeners very jealous right now. So currently you're in New York, obviously. And what are your next stops?
Okay, so I am obviously here for the next 13, 14 hours or something. And then I fly out to California. So I'll be driving up the coast from La Jolla up to San Francisco. And I'm there for 3 days. And then I'm flying across to Hawaii. So I'm on Oahu for 6 or 7 days. Then I fly over to Australia. And I'm there for 2 weeks. So driving the coast from Noosa down to Byron. And then I was going to be going to Bangladesh initially, but now they've got their elections due for the period of time that I would be there. So there's sort of a high chance that actually the country might be in lockdown, or it just might present some political issues with me traveling. So I decided to kind of change those destinations. And so now I'm going to the Kerala region of India and then on to Sri Lanka for my final stop. And then my husband is bringing out our 2 youngest children to meet in Sri Lanka after 6 weeks away from home. So yeah, so it's an amazing list of countries, and I have not been to any of them ever before. So for me, it's just, yeah, it's mind blowing.
I got tired just listening to it.
It's a lot of time zones in a very short space of time.
That is definitely a lot. So what initially pushed you to apply for the fellowship to get, and then, because you knew, I mean, you must have known there would have been a lot of traveling doing. So what initially pushed you to get to that point where you said, hey, I want to do this and I'm going to apply for it?
Yeah, it was a really good friend of mine, Chris Hines, who is the co-founder of Surfers Against Sewage in the UK. And I've been friends with him for a number of years now. And I've always been campaigning and talking and highlighting the lack of particularly ethnic representation within UK surfing. It's such a sort of predominantly white sport, as we all know, and we talk about quite a lot. But in the UK, it's really significantly underrepresented at any level of governance within the structures of surfing. And I think kind of the only places where you see any sort of representation is generally in grassroots, and that's down to organisations like Wave Wahinis, who have been putting it out there and talking about it for a really long time now. And so he knew I had this sort of real passion and drive to understand what it is that is stopping that representation, and why isn't it sort of reflected, because there's so many different communities that can benefit from surfing and that could access it if there was opportunity there. And so I've just wanted to really immerse myself in kind of learning about that. And like I said earlier, I'm a bit of a geek. So I do learn about the history. I do learn about people's background stories. And, when people say, oh, I'm stopping people going to the beach, it's like, actually, that's not necessarily true because, there were things that were actively stopping people going from the beach, particularly in the States and in South Africa and other countries. So I think there's a lot to be said for learning about that history. And he'd suggested to me, he was like, have you heard of this Churchill Fellowship? And I was like, well, no, isn't stuff like that for academics to do and people who've got, more experience? And I'm not an academic in any way. I, don't have university degrees and stuff. And he just said, no, it's actually designed for everybody to apply if you really care about something and you want to make a positive change in the UK and you can see other countries that are doing it better, then chances to go and learn from those countries and actually look at them and travel around and really engage with community, with the structures that you want to influence back in the UK. And so I applied, and it was a really easy application process, but it was really short in that you had to answer questions in like 200 words. Right. And that's really tricky when you're like me and you tend to ramble and get excited and emotional. So it took a long time for me to get everything down to 200 words. And I got through the first phase and I got through the second phase. And then I was being invited to an interview in London. And amazingly, I did turn up to the interview with a minute to spare because I'd gotten on the wrong tube 3 times. This is why I can't be trusted alone with directions. So my husband's panicking that I make my way around the world alone. And amazingly, they decided, yes, that hot, sweaty mess that turned up in our office that day is the right person to do this research. And for me, it's such a validation because I was brought up in a city. I didn't grow up surfing. I grew up very much in mainstream sports of like athletics, netball, all the other sports where I saw reflections of me. So to suddenly go into surfing where I had no idea that actually it was so underrepresented until I was in it. And then suddenly you can see those barriers because I wasn't brought up within the sport. And then to kind of be in that area, in that room and have somebody go, yes, we think your experience and your view of it from an external perspective, but now I'm very much in these spaces, is really different and it's really unique. And I think it brings a different perspective to what somebody who's grown up surfing would bring. So I think that's probably why they chose me, because I do have that outside view despite being in it for 10 years now.
Yeah. No, definitely. There's one thing which, as you're speaking, one thing which I'm always thinking about, and it comes across like when I speak with my students, when I teach surfing, that we always have to remember that after a certain period of time, after a certain while, it becomes almost reactive to us. We know what we're looking at. We see the ocean. We know what to do. We don't even think about it. It just happens. And so that the amount of time it takes from something to move from our brain to our body cut drastically. We decide we want to do a turn on the wave. We just do it. It just happens. Whereas, and I associate that with someone who grew up with surfing, or even someone who was, their parents surf and then they started teaching them at a very young age. So to them, it just is. It's almost as normal as breathing to them. And those of us who started surfing later on in life were like, okay, I remember what it was like to do this. So now I can actually explain it to someone who doesn't have that, what it was like for me, and then break it down for them. Because so many times I watch people and I listen to people and you hear them say, oh yeah, just get up.
Just get up.
Just get up.
But it's not that simple.
And
especially
just get up.
If you're learning later in life and you might have had injuries or, age and all those things. And you've got to be able to adapt those things. It's not as simple as like just getting up. But also it's, I think when we started our women's group, it was really key that, the primary objective wasn't necessarily to stand up. It was about just being on a board and feeling what that's like. And, we'd always spend a lot of sessions just like, let's just lie on your belly for a while and actually just steer and feel what being on a wave feels like. And it's just that glorious feeling, and it just enabled other people who had back issues, who had other issues to actually enjoy surfing with us, but not feeling that they had pressure to stand up. Yes. And whilst the majority of women did stand up, it wasn't the primary objective, and they took, as long as they needed to. There was no like, if you haven't done it in the first couple of sessions, then you're not good enough. There was none of that. It was all just like, but did you have fun? Yeah. Okay, well, there we go.
Just remember, this is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
So while you were writing this out, because I took a look at the fellowship online and I clicked around on it. I mean, obviously the ones for this year were closed, but I just clicked around on one of them. Did you ever think to yourself, and if the answer is no, then feel free to say no, but did you ever think to yourself, I am submitting this for surfing? They're just going to think, yeah, you just want to travel and surf on our dime, don't you?
There was that bit. And then, and then the disclaimer is that I'm a terrible surfer. So I knew that they couldn't see that that was my excuse for doing it. So I'm still very much a novice. I am getting slightly better now, and I can occasionally get out back if it's a nice, very small day. So so I don't think my remit was to go and catch as many waves as every destination as I possibly could. It was very much to engage with the community and engage with the governance structures and actually learn from those communities. And yes, if I am lucky enough to get a few waves, then an absolute bonus, as far as I'm concerned. But I did think, there's no way they're going to go for this. This is crazy. But I was really lucky in that someone else, and actually they were on my panel of interviewers, had done a similar study and a similar bit of research, but on terrestrial land. So they'd done it looking at national parks sort of in the UK and said, why are they so underrepresented from communities of colour? Again, from exactly the same sort of standpoints that I was looking at, but I was taking mine onto the ocean. So I think I was really lucky in the fact that actually there was a precedent set. But then when I went and did the sort of research afterwards of how many other Churchill Fellows had done surfing as their fellowship, I think there were 8 in total, and 5 of those 8 were actually surf lifesaving. And so it was only me and 2 other people who were looking at it from surfing. And obviously in those 8 people, I was the only woman. And obviously I was the only person of colour of those 8. And that's in the entire history of Churchill Fellowships. So I think it's a really exciting thing to be doing. And it's all under the umbrella of ocean conservation. It's all under the umbrella of we can change the face of ocean conservation by the joy that is surfing, because it's completely changed my life and all of my life choices and what I do for a career and how I bring my children up and all of those things. But none of that would have happened had I not seen the impact and felt the impact that surfing has had on me and on the children and on the women that I've surfed with over the 10 years. And I just think if it's changed my life so drastically, but I'm not one of the people who see myself represented within this sport and this sector, then it can change so many other lives as well. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to bring to the UK systems to kind of really evidence that, because I am living proof of.
Yes, very well said, very well said. There's a line that, from all places to take wisdom from the movie Point Break.
Absolutely, so it's a source.
There you go, exactly. It's hope you stick with it. Surfing's a source. It'll change your life, swear to God. And I have never heard a line in a movie said with so much truth behind it, because to those who don't surf or those who've never surfed, it's just a line in the movie. But to those of us who actually do surf and started later on in life, it really did and has changed our lives. And it is the source.
It really is.
100% is the source.
Yeah, there's much to be said for the wisdom of Point Break.
The original, not the thing that they made afterwards, because that doesn't count.
That is not
that does not count. As far as we know, as far as we're concerned, that never happened.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They should rename it something different. It was not the Point Break either.
It's not my Point Break. So what's one thing that the ocean has given you? I mean, we've been speaking about, in general, what you took from it and so on, but what's one thing you can say with absolute certainty that the ocean has given you that you carry with you on a daily basis?
My husband. I would say it's given me my husband. I was pretty scared of being in the water. I loved being by the ocean. So this was before we started the club, obviously. But I was signed up to do a triathlon. So I was meant to be swimming the 2.5 miles. And I'd had an accident with my car. So I'd been involved in a car wreck and I'd had a sort of health scare. And suddenly I became really aware of my immortality. And as a mum, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm putting myself into this thing that could kill me voluntarily for doing this accomplishment that I'm so keen to do. And it suddenly gave me this real fear in having panic attacks when I got near the ocean to then go in and swim. I just couldn't do it. And I was actually training my husband as a personal trainer at the time. We were just friends. And I was explaining this to him because he is a real waterman and has been surfing for 30, 35 years or something. And he's surfed all over the world. So he's incredibly jealous of what I'm doing. And, you know, I was talking about this fear and he said to me, look, why don't I take you for a swim? And I looked like mortified, but he just said, look, come with me. We'll go out in the sea and we'll just get used to being in the water again. And I was like, actually, do you know what? I trust you. I know you know the sea in this local area. So I was like, okay, let's do it. And I remember we got in the water and I think it actually scared him because he was like, oh my God, I had no idea you were really that scared, because I was full on ugly crying in the sea. You know, he did get me in the water, but I cried, I was panicking. I was like, so it did take a lot for him to calm me down and just get me to swim. Like, and I must have only swam about, I don't know, 50 meters or something ridiculous like that. But it gave him the taste of actually that I was really scared, but it also gave me the confidence to know that I could do it with somebody. So I then actually approached a local life-saving club and coach, and I got her to take me swimming regularly. So then that became like a real moment of overcoming my fear and getting back in the water. And then we started the club less than a year after that moment. And then my husband and I started dating, and then we got married, then we had a child and all of the things. And so, yeah, I think I put that down to, you know, we just found the ocean together. And he knew the ocean already, but he definitely helped me find the ocean in a way that I don't think I would have done in fact, I know I wouldn't have done on my own. And I feel forever grateful to him for that.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm like, you know, all my other questions now seem like I shouldn't ask these. And it's given, but that is a beautiful story.
It's given all of our kids, you know, this lifeline. Like my eldest obviously surfs a lot. You know, the club was for them anyway. And so they surf all the time now, and they've got a beautiful style. My middle daughter, she surfs loads, and, you know, and now she doesn't tend to go out with me so much. She goes out with my husband more because he's a better surfer than me. He can go out back properly, but also apparently I'm too enthusiastic in the water. So yes. Whereas my youngest one hasn't got that embarrassment yet, so I can still whoop and cheer for her, and that's fine.
Nice. I have a friend who, I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to embarrass her, but I gave her she was a surf student of mine, and then she graduated to the point where she didn't need us anymore, and she was out surfing and she hurt her foot. The guy who was there, who's just a friend of hers, carried her back to shore. They returned the board that they rented, and then he brought her home, and the rest is history. Now they're married with a dog and living in Connecticut, and so it's a beautiful thing.
In the ocean, it brings together marriages and children. It's wonderful.
With dogs and all kinds of stuff. That's beautiful. So as a mother, a woman of color, and now a traveler, what does belonging in the surf culture look like, or what do you imagine it to be?
It's so layered, I think, for me. I didn't really have much concept of what it would be until I was in it. And I still find that I'm learning quite a lot about the culture and community. But what I do see is it's just about friends. It is about community. You know, the women that I get to surf with are tremendous. The girls that we surf with as a club are wonderful. And, you know, it's been 10 years of surfing with those particular girls. So they've all finished university and they're all grown up, and, you know, and they still come back and they still talk to us and they still fondly remember the club. And, you know, many of them are surf coaches and have been surfing around the world. And I just, for me, it's just watching that growth and watching that sort of home, that everyone is off doing their own thing, but they've still got this one connecting moment. But I think it goes deeper than that in sort of the way of connecting globally. And I think that's where I've discussed it with other particularly other women of colour when I've been talking to them, is I found that for me, the ocean has been this place to connect all the bits of me. And I feel really interconnected with like my history, with my ancestry, with my family, wherever we are in the globe. It's like I'll always seek out water and know that takes me back to where they are in the UK, and it takes me back to my heritage in Mauritius or in Bangladesh and all of those things. And I think that's what's really beautiful about being connected to the ocean, whether it's through surfing, whether it's through bodyboarding and bellyboarding and all those things that I do love doing. It's a connection that's global, and I don't think you get that unless you've got that ancestral heritage in other parts of the world. I really don't. I think you get it maybe if you've traveled surfing, but it's still different somehow. But if you come from like mixed heritage like me, or if you're from backgrounds where you've got ancestors in other parts of the world, I just think it adds a different layer of depth to your connection to the ocean, because you know that your actions where you are, like, you know, for example, I'll pick up litter on the beach and I'll do things and I'll change what I buy. But I know my acts where I am in the UK, where I am in New York at the moment, that directly impacts my ancestors and my family that are still based in Mauritius, that are still based in Bangladesh. Right. So I'm directly responding to part of that sort of climate emergency by the small actions that I take in the UK. And I just think that's, it's one of those crazy things, but I do think that is a really big part of why I do it, because I do feel that I then can have an impact on something so far away. And I don't know if that answered your question.
No, and we all want to feel like we're connected, not just to each other, but especially to our ancestors. And if you are a person of color, of a mixed heritage, especially, so you may not be, let me not say you are not, you may not be aware of exactly where your ancestors and your ancestry came from. BRAG, the Big Wave Risk Assessment Group, they have a saying and their motto, we're just like dropping the mottos today: divided by land but connected by water.
Yeah.
So, and as water people, watermen, water women, water people, surfers, like you said, bodyboarders, even if you just go and stand up in the water up to your ankles, or just sit down and listen to the ocean, there is a sense of peace and calm there. And at some point, one of your ancestors touched water. At some point. And there's a very good chance that that molecule or that drop of water is floating around in there somewhere. So Dr. Easky Britton, actually, in one of her books, she mentions it. And it's definitely real that this water like follows it from 600 years ago, 700 years ago, however long. So it's still there, and you can definitely connect through there in that way. So no, you did answer the question. I understand, fully understand, and agree with what you're saying with that.
Thank you. I did say to my youngest, because we're really lucky in that we live within walking distance from our local beach, but on the way into school, we drive around sort of the point at Croydon. It's gorgeous. And I said, and usually in the mornings, we say morning to Mother Ocean, and like, how's she feeling today? And, is she tired? Is she looking grumpy? And, my youngest, is like, oh, I think she's a bit cross today. Maybe because the tide was out and it gets really low in the UK. We have massive tides. And she said, maybe she's a bit upset because the sand isn't going away. So we're like, oh, maybe if she changes, then she'll start to come back in and people want to go and play in her. And we always have this chat about her in the morning. And I remember saying to her a week before I was due to leave, I was like, now remember when we talk to, Mother Ocean and we say good morning in the morning, you can say good morning to Mum in the morning, because that same ocean that you say the good morning to and drive past is the same ocean that I'm going to be seeing when I'm in New York, when I'm in California, when I'm in all of these places. It's going to be there. So you can say good morning to me and you can say good night to the moon. And those two are those constants. And I just think, again, because we always talk about the ocean in that way with our children, that it is this connector and this constant, so that we hope that we give that feeling of connectivity, that regardless of where we are in the world, that we're always kind of together.
Yes. Good morning to the ocean. Good night to the moon. Yvette, we're writing a book. We're writing a children's book. Oh, don't steal our idea. We're writing a book.
Yeah, trademarked now.
It's funny because on New Year's Day, when my mom was before she passed, I would go down to the beach on New Year's Day and video chat with her as the sun came up. And literally I would sit down and with her, so the two of us can listen to the ocean and watch the sun come up on the new, so it was a new day and the first sunrise on the first day of the new year and so on. And we would do that. And we just felt connected that way, even though I was here and she was in another country. So, but still, we just felt connected that way. So I've, again, completely understand and trademarked. So don't try to steal our idea. What's one thing you hope to bring back, or a few things that you hope to bring back with you once the travels are done and you've had time to, like, because I know you'd be taking like tons of notes and writing and so on, and you also have to present what you've been doing. So what's one thing that you really hope, the main thing you hope to bring back?
I really want to have that pathway. I really want to understand what it is that other countries are doing that the UK isn't doing to enable greater representation within their organisational structures, within not just surfing, but within their ocean governance type structures too, because the other countries seem to be just much more representative at every level of governance, whether it's grassroots, whether it's right up to CEOs, trustees, and all of those things, support staff, coaching, you know. And I really want to understand what it is that the UK isn't doing or hasn't got in place, or what are we missing? What's that magic dust that we're not sort of sprinkling on stuff? I think that's the big thing, because I really want to be able to look at the system that we've got and see where that gap is that isn't enabling that progress, or isn't enabling people to come in, or isn't attracting people. Or, you know, I want to understand that. But I think, in fact, I don't think I know I'm going to come back with so much more. Just from like the conversations I've had here in New York, I know that I'm going to come back with such a wealth of information and stories and just ideas of the things that I want to dig into further. And, you know, I met with Karen Song yesterday, and I know I said to her, I was like, I really want to talk to you again in more of a, like, we'll record a podcast together. And because so many threads that we were starting to talk about, I just wanted to kind of, you know, I could have spoken for hours with her. And I think there's going to be a lot of moments where I want to explore things deeper, but they're not necessarily with the case in point that I'm trying to achieve with this particular fellowship, because I guess I've got to try and stay as focused as possible on the outcomes that I want to have. But I think the reality is I'm going to find so much more and so much more depth into what surfing has created within certain communities. And I think that's going to be a really powerful thing. But where that will lead, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's generally, at least I've found, kind of difficult for surfers in particular, because not going off on that tangent, because we're so accustomed to just a flow and just let the conversation go where it may. But then if you're focused on one thing in particular, then, you know, you have to, okay, I have to remember this to stay here. But, you know, surfers tend to just like I said, just go with this flow. And it definitely helps us along in life and with surfing, because if we're so focused on that one wave that's coming in, we'll miss the even better one behind it.
Or you miss the dolphins.
I was just going to say, or you miss the dolphins, or you miss the sunrise, or you miss the sunset, because there's nothing like a sunrise surf. There's nothing like a sunset surf.
So
it's beautiful. But if you're just so focused, okay, I have to surf now and I have to catch 6 waves and I have to go to this, then you're going to miss it. So I understand what you're saying with trying to balance the two, because even with some of the research that we do, we still have to take a look at it and go, okay, this is not what we were asking. This is great information, but it's not really what we can use right now. So let's try to get back on point with this.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a problem. So I'm looking forward to it, because I'm meeting with sort of the ISA and things like Surfing Australia, and, you know, so meeting with those big governance structures there, and, you know, the Surfrider team, the Save the Waves. So I'm getting to meet people within those structures, which I think is just going to lead those really vital conversations. But it's meeting, you know, the people on the outsides of it as well, and kind of seeing what their perspectives are. I think that's just going to add those different layers as to why it's so different in those different communities. And I think in particular, I'm most excited about, if I'm allowed to say.
No, please.
Okay. I'm probably most excited about going to Hawaii. I'm hopefully going to be meeting with Cliff Capono and talking to him at sort of, you know, great length. And I've got so much in my head that I want to kind of talk to him about. But I think for me, the most interesting element to discussing surfing is going to be, you know, coming through like that colonial lens, because you're literally talking about a colonized sport on a colonized land
Right.
that has been, taken, curated, and then repackaged to us via California, which is kind of the bespoke sort of surf culture that people tend to associate with surfing. And it's so far removed from what actual surf culture was initially, whether you're looking at the Polynesian Hawaiian roots or whether you're looking at the roots within sort of, the African roots. They're just so different to what we see in that curated, repackaged version.
100%. And, it's funny you mentioned Dr. Capono, and he's one of our guests for this 2026. We're trying to get him on the show. We're trying to find time where everyone's schedule works out well. Yeah. I know he's getting ready for the Eddie.
Yeah, because the window's open for that. And I think when I'm in Hawaii, I think the window for the Dahui shootout is actually on. And I'm like, oh my God.
Amazing.
I know. I'm really hoping.
That'll be amazing. And, so to our listeners and viewers, I know you're listening to Yvette talk, and you may be thinking, she's going to go to all these amazing places and she's going to surf all these amazing places. But one thing I realized some time ago is that when you're there to work, you're actually working. Yeah. So there are times it's actually almost even worse.
Yeah, like watching it.
Yeah, just watching it, because you're like, okay, I can go surf right now, but I know I'm not getting out at the time. I got to get out to go do this and to go do that.
Although, to be fair, if I'm there watching the Dahui, there's no way I'd be putting a toe in that water.
No,
to be fair.
I hear you.
It would be terrifying. I'll be waiting for the little baby waves.
But again, this is Hawaii, so their baby waves could still be...
This is true.
This could still be double overhead for us regular mortals. So with all of this, let's question about the future. So what do you hope for that this will bring for the surf culture, or where this direction of surf culture is going for the next generation, or even the generation after that? Because like our generation is really the ones that are dealing with it, but are immersed completely. Like the previous generation, they were immersed in it, like, hey, yes, people of color, we don't surf. You don't surf, you don't go in the water, or whatever. I feel like our generation are the ones that grew up, or at least Google was invented while we were up and coming. And so now you Google surfer, and that's when you see the dude. And it's always a guy.
Yeah, always. Yeah, that is literally it. Well, it's Point Break, isn't it? Yeah. It is that, but without the
little rubber people who don't shave.
Who don't shave it? Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, so many gems from that
film. There you go.
But I guess the dream is when like communities are actually, it's not just grassroots anymore. I think what's been really interesting is kind of listening to all the grassroots movements that have been doing this stuff for years now and have been working really hard and getting more people involved and getting more people engaged with surfing. And it's like, when is that going to be creeping up the progress ladder, especially in like competitive surfing, I guess? Because, I watch competitive surfing. It's not our club's not built around competitive surfing in any way. It's very much like a fun session. But the world views surfing through that competitive lens, like whether it's the Olympics and, all of those things. And I just think those structures, to be able to see that you can go in at any level as any ethnicity and feel that it's a safe space and that it's somewhere that you can be, and you can be your full self in those moments, or that you can be a surf photographer and you can be a surf writer, you can be a surf journalist, all of those things that previously have been quite an elite and exclusive area. I'd really like to see those being opened up more. And I kind of think it's something that I guess this particular, in saying sort of this generation, we've been talking about it. So we've been the ones that have kind of been going, this is an issue. I guess we're sort of lucky in the sense that we weren't sort of the age when, you were competing in South Africa at the times of apartheid. We weren't in that generation, which was just horrific. But we're now at the generation where we can talk about this stuff, whether it's, it's wrong that it's so exclusive. It's wrong that it's so elitist. And it's like, how do we change that narrative? How do we make sure that we're pushing a narrative that is accessible, is inclusive? And you know, and it's really difficult to say those things in the political times that we're in as well, because it's like, are we going to be kind of going backwards now with everything that is happening globally? But surfing is this one amazing thing that has always prided itself, whether rightly or wrongly, on being like counterculture and pushing those boundaries. It's clearly none of those things, because it hasn't pushed any boundaries. You know, it's pushed the boundaries that it wanted to, but it's actually a very boundaried sport. So I think now is the time maybe for surfing to be that counterculture, to actually be the one that pushes against those systems of oppression, those systems of like, here's a strict narrative of what we've believed. It's time to break those. And you know, and surfing is a fun way of doing it, but it just takes more than our voices to do that. And that's the hard thing, is because it's tiring to also be those voices, because you're constantly the one going, well, it's like this, it's like that. And you're like, how many times do you need the conversation? Because I remember, you know, people going, well, at least we're having a conversation about it now. And I'm like, well, yes, that's good that we're having the conversation, but that was 5 years ago. Like, we're still having the conversation. And it's like, where's the action? And I know these things, they don't change overnight. I'm, you know, not that naive, but there has to be some change. And I think it's been great to see globally that there is more change. You know, the UK isn't having that rate of change, which I think is really sad. But the global outlook is brilliant. I think when you look at countries like India and Sri Lanka and even Bangladesh, which are such young in terms of their surf culture and community, they are really changing that lineup. You know, even like things like the Philippines, and you've just got some great surfers coming out of these areas. And I just think that is fantastic. And they're not necessarily coming from wealth or sort of money or any of those things. They're coming because there's opportunity. And that is so vital, because sport was always seen as a ladder. It was always seen as a tool for change. And I don't want surfing to lose that. You know, I want surfing to stay this tool for change, but it needs to get away from that elite side to do that, and to be really, you know, like some of the Mexican surfers have, you know, they've come from that element too. And I just think it's just amazing. And some of the Brazilian team, you know, they've come from really different lifestyles, and they've really worked their way up, and they've created a sport that is amazing, and it's completely transformed their lives. And I just think it's got the opportunity to do that for, you know, surfers in India and surfers in other countries. And I just think if it's only the elite and the wealthy countries that are dictating what happens within the sport, it's not going to grow at the rate it should. Sure. Sorry, I went really off topic then.
No. I mean, it's always amazing to me. I use the example of, it's amazing to me that a country like Fiji only got their first sponsored athlete recently.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how is that possible?
How crazy is that?
It's Fiji, the home of cloud break, home of lefts, rights, restaurants, all these other waves, swimming pool, but they only got their first sponsored athletes recently. So that definitely that's amazing to me. Okay, so I know we're running close to time, but still want to give you a chance to ask, because we always do you ask questions, any questions you may have to the host. But at the same time, I also want to ask you a couple fast fire questions.
Okay.
So first and foremost, longboard or shortboard?
Longboard.
Single fin or single fin or 2-1 setup?
Definitely be a single fin.
Okay, classic. Favorites pre and post surf meal?
Pre-surf, I don't tend to eat. I'll just have loads of water.
Everybody says that. I don't know where this image of us just like eating nothing but burritos and pizza before we paddle out came from.
And post-surf, I would say my favourite surfs have been Ackroyd, when we finish at sunset and we go to Down End Cafe and have a really lovely Sri Lankan curry.
Yes. That actually sounds pretty good right now.
Yeah, I have to say kudos to Wasanta and his Sri Lankan curries. They are the best.
I'll get the social media link or the Instagram link or whatever, and we'll drop it in there. So
amazing.
Give them all some props on that one. Okay, and my final question is: what is the one question that you are chasing? whether in water or in life.
Wow, that is huge. The one question I'm chasing. I guess the question I would be chasing is what impact I can have to make the world a better place for my children. That was really woolly because I'm like, I don't know how to answer that.
No,
but I just want to leave it in a better place for them.
Absolutely. I mean, you're taking it on, literally asking, what can I do for this? So thank you. I hate this part. Do you have any questions for me?
Oh, yes, I do. So I'm going to ask you what you think, who do you think holds the power within surfing? Where do you think surfing's power lies?
That's a good question because I can answer it in twofold based on the definition of power in itself. Right now, the quote unquote big corporations are losing the perceived power that they thought they had because they kind of took it too far. They saw this and they've milked everything and they're like, hey, let's just throw as much as we can out there and people are going to suck it. I mean, I've seen commercials for surfing that have nothing to do with the water whatsoever, just because it looks cool. I remember when nothing against Apple, but I remember when the iWatch first came out. One of the first commercials I saw was this man out in the lineup with his iWatch. He got a call and the ad was, never miss a call. And I looked at it and thought to myself, you obviously did not run that by any surfers because any surfer worth their salt will know the last thing I want to do is get interrupted with a call while to go to work while I'm surfing.
Yes.
So the corporations used to have it. I think that it's leaving now. Now, I think it's a little bit, I feel like it's in limbo because it's now up to the people who are I don't want to say true surfers, or the people who enjoy surfing. Let me say it that way. People who enjoy surfing to literally take that back and to say, hey, this is an activity. This is something I can do. This is something I do for my health, for my well-being, because it makes me happy. So what if I don't get paid, millions of dollars to do this? So I feel that that's where the biggest disconnect is because like you said, a lot of times when people look at surfing, they look at it from the perspective of competition, big wave Nazare, the competition that you see, the Olympics and so on. And they think, okay, that's what a surfer is and that's what they have to be and that's what they have to do. And usually that's what he looks like and that's what he has to be and so on and so forth. Not realizing that you take a 9-foot, and I know I'm going to get flack for this, but you take a 9-foot foamy and you paddle out on a 2-foot day. If you come back in with the grin that I know you will have, then who's to say you're doing it wrong? So I feel like it's up to us as layman surfers then to take back that power. So I feel like the power is it's in limbo.
Nice. That's a good answer. I like that. I like that we can take the power back.
Yeah. We have to know our history and how we are connected to it as well. So it's not this foreign concept. I mean, so many people, we're based in New York, but so many people in New York never think about New York as a place where you can surf. And we've had, WSL competitions out here. Very few people think about it.
It's incredible. I originally wasn't coming to New York as part of the travels, and a friend of mine was just like, no, you've got to see New York. And I was like, for surfing? And we kind of spoke, and then I'd obviously listened to like Swell Season. Then I was listening to like your podcast with WeSurf, and I was like, oh my God, New York is like the most diverse surf place I think I've ever heard. And so immediately it was like, right, New York has to be on my list. And it was wonderful going out to Rockaway yesterday. Like, I was so stunned. And to be fair, it was like UK surfing. Just looking at it, it was like surfing in the UK. It was cold. It was small. It was onshore. It was everything that a UK surfer lives for. So it was like, wow, this really is surfing here. And I think the fact that you have such access on the beach is really impressive. Just the access to get to the beach is one thing. Like in the UK, we can't. I remember Gina was like really shocked when I told her that we're not allowed to take surfboards on any public transport. Yeah. Get that. You're like, well, so if you're not based by the ocean or you have a car, you can't get there because we can't use public transport with boards, which is horrific.
Wow.
It's just another barrier.
I mean, it's interesting. New York surfing is very interesting. We describe it as surfing in New York is like New York itself. there's one day where it could be just completely calm. You have like a little 2-foot wave, nice and mellow, and like around now it's cold. And then there are days just out of the blue, a hurricane will swing up and it is 80 degrees outside. It's 6 to 8 feet, pumping, boards broken everywhere. It's just like, yeah, those are the days that you're like, calling in sick to work, but it's just really like, and then it'll just go right back to the way it was the day before that. So it's just really back and forth, but hey, it's home. We love it.
It's Mother Ocean.
Yeah. Like we say sometimes, be it ever so crumble, there's no wave like home.
Exactly. So, yes. Nothing is quite like your own surf break.
Exactly. Any other questions?
Any advice for me on my travels? Do you have any must-sees, must-dos? Because I've never traveled to any of these places.
I mean, there is so much in California and Hawaii. I can give you a list, like just going down the list. I mean, I know the people that you'll be speaking with. I'm not sure if they're already on your list, but, David Mesfin is one of the person that first people that pop into my head. You have Gregory Rochelle, who's also on the podcast for Black Surfers Collective. Then, I mean, you're speaking with like one of my heroes in Hawaii, Cliff Caporto. So
I'm so excited.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna say it because when he was in New York, he had his one of his short films and he was showing it in Rockaway. And I mean, and I told him point blank, I was like, dude, I'm fanboying right now just to be able to sit down and talk about science a little bit with him. So that was great. But yeah, I think that doing that is definitely, you have the people already that you want to speak to. From my experience, when I travel to surf and then I travel to do research on surfing. And that's how I know from experience that there's a very good chance that I will not get into the water just because of the work that I'm doing. Yeah. But, I think about it as I'm doing this to bring it to people so that they can see it.
Exactly.
And bring that forth. A perfect example was a Great Day in the Stoke when last time we were out in LA.
That always looks so fantastic.
It was so much fun. And if you look at the videos we were having, we were having a lot of fun. Yeah. I didn't get in the water once.
Yeah, no, that doesn't. I know what you mean. When we do our contest, because we have like a women's surf contest now every year, it was the first, I still can't believe it, the first female focused contest in the UK. And that was in 2022. We ran our first one. First one, how bad's that? They'd had like participation days, but never like a female focus contest. So we put one on and we've been running it every year. It was also a memorial to a sort of dear friend that we lost. So it's been an emotional one, but fantastic. And I feel the same because the day is amazing. We run it over a weekend and I have the best time. But yeah, very rarely. I managed to get in the water this time once for like one of the heats because we do like a crazy relay and it's so much fun. So I decided, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going in. But yeah, same thing. It's just one of those things, isn't it? You see the joy that it brings other people and you still get that feeling of excitement, even though you've not been in the water, which is, I don't know there's many more sports that do that, to be honest.
Yeah, I remember afterwards, thinking to myself, like when the day was finally done, because I got down there early and I was, we sponsored some athletes to take part in it and, getting people food and whatnot. By the time the day was done and I got back to my hotel room, which was literally just across the street, lay down and I'm like, why do my feet hurt? And then I realized I'd been literally running back and forth and walking on sand or running on sand all day. And then I was flying out the next day. So I didn't stick around for like
but then
all
you
of
got
the
to
fun
sit down on the plane. I think a friend of mine's competed in that. I think from the UK, Sayander Hewitt. I think he's come over to compete at Great Day in the Stoke a couple of years ago, maybe.
So, I mean, it's it's always fun. And, no, I wish you well. And I'm really going to be following
Thank you.
your travels really closely. To our listeners and viewers, I suggest you do the same because there's going to be a lot of information and a lot of this coming out of this. Yvette strikes me as the type of person will be a little bit not put herself out there, but pay attention to her Instagram because some of the pictures and stuff I saw you like posting, I'm like, oh, I wish I was in Central Park right now. No, as opposed to sitting down at work. But I'm glad that New York treated you well and that you were able to touch base with people. And thank you so much.
New York's been amazing.
No, I really appreciate it because I know you are like, go, and moving quickly. Talk about a New York minute.
Oh, it's been amazing to be here. And yeah, New York's been fantastic. And now, next up, California. But yeah, getting to see Central Park today, I was literally just living every film I've ever seen. It was just, it's been truly amazing. And I cannot thank you enough for inviting me in on the podcast. I listen to it and I'm such a fan of you. I'm such a fan of the show that to get to do this while I'm here was just like, yes, absolutely, I am here.
Okay, thank you. So, like I said to our listeners and viewers, we will be posting Yvette's Yvette's Instagram in the show notes. But before we do that, is there anyone you want to say hello to or give a shout out to before we wrap up?
Massive hello to my lovely, wonderful family. Huge thank you to my husband Steve for holding down the fort and enabling me to come and do this. 6 weeks away from home is really challenging. And yeah, hello to all my children. So hi Aiden, hi Juno, hi Neve. I love you all and I cannot wait to see the two youngest, so Juno and Neve. I cannot wait to see you in Sri Lanka and squeeze you so hard because I've missed them. But just hi to all my friends and every Wavahini that has surfed with us and is still yet to surf with us. We're in for a new year.
Okay, great. So we're going to wrap up and I'd like to close with this. The ocean remembers us, even when we forget ourselves. It remembers everybody that ever approached it with fear, with curiosity, with hope. If it is not just about standing on the board, it's about learning how to listen. The waves do not end, they return. Every set carries something forward, a lesson, a lineage, a reminder. Today, Yvette shared with us more than just her journey. She shared with us a way of seeing. A reminder that surfing is not owned, it is offered. That access is not accidental, it is built. Wave by wave, person by person, story by story. So whether you meet the ocean every morning, like you do, or are still standing on the shore, know this, the water is not asking you to be fearless. It's only asking you to be present. So this is WeSurf, where culture moves like the tide and the lineup is wide enough for all of us. Until next time, stay connected, stay salt-minded, and keep listening to the water. It has a message for you. Thank you.
Love it.